Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, station manager for Manatee Educational Television, and we're very honored and very fortunate to have with us today Congressman Vern Buchanan in our new television studio. Congressman, thank you very much for being here. I know you have a very busy schedule today, and we're very fortunate to have you with us.
Charles, it's great to be here, and what impressive new facilities, and well-deserved. I think Manatee County's got a great future in terms of what you guys have done, but now a lot more capability for your viewers in Manatee County. I'm excited. It's a debut, right?
You are on the debut show, sir.
Okay.
So, and again, thank you. I know how busy your schedule is today, and to take time out to try to explain to Manatee County and Sarasota County some of the many things that you're involved with is very fortunate for us. But before we begin today, I want to talk a little bit about Congressman Buchanan and all the committees that he serves on. Congressman Buchanan serves on the House Committee for Small Business and is the Republican leader of the Subcommittee for Finance and Taxing. Mr. Buchanan is also a member of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as a member of the House Veteran Affairs Committee. Well, sir, those are critical committees in this time and this effort. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with each of those committees?
Yeah, they're all significant. Originally, I'll start out on veterans. I didn't get on the Veterans Committee initially. I wanted to. We have 97,000 veterans in this area, and we have our freedoms today because of the veterans. But I'm also on the subcommittee for health, which we oversee all the new facilities for like in Manatee County. We're building an expanded facility out there, I think, for dental and other things, so the veterans will be able to stay on this side of the bridge more. But the veterans is a big thing. We have almost 2 million veterans in Florida, 22 million veterans in the country. So I want to make sure that we do everything we can. If they've earned a benefit, we want to make sure we get that benefit to them. So we work very hard, very close with many of our veterans, and I'm very excited to be on that committee.
And I want to talk briefly about that later in the program because you've done a lot of things for veterans in this community, and we're going to talk about that as we get into the program. But you're also involved in a number of other committees as well. So talk a little bit more about that.
The other committee is transportation. We haven't had anybody on transportation that I know of 40 or 50 years. Let's say in Manatee and Sarasota County. We're a donor state, which means everybody buys a gallon of gas, a certain percentage goes up to a trust fund in Washington, and then that money gets redistributed for the highway fund, which is coming up now every 6 years. So a donor state means for every dollar we send up there, we only get about 90 cents back, where New York gets $1.27. But the problem is, when it gets to Tallahassee, that 90 cents, it gets down to Manatee and Sarasota counties, we get 50 cents of that, or 55% of the 90%. So I'm hoping, I tell people jokingly, the show I seen 20 years ago, The Equalizer, I'm hoping to be able to bring additional funds here, a lot more than 50% what we used to get. And I'm going to work closely with the county and city commissions. They really decide on the projects. But I can tell you, like Port Manatee, we're looking to work on the connector road there. It's critical to the future, the diversity of the economy. And then also University in 75 is another top project because there's the mall's expanding and it's the road, the inlet to the airport. Right. So we look at, those are two big projects that we're going to focus on. We won't get all the money, but we'll get a pretty good slug and get those projects ideally going. And then, of course, the other committee that I'm on is small business, which is my big passion. I'm not a professional politician. I've been in business for 30 years, and I think we need more business-type people in Washington.
Correct.
But I think number one, when I go around, we got health care now, but number one is the economy and jobs. And I was very, very disappointed that small business creates 70% of the jobs in Florida. They make up 99% of all the businesses in Florida. I was chairman of the Florida Chamber, and 99% of all the businesses registered in Tallahassee are small businesses. So when you only get this, they do the stimulus, and you only get 3% of the $800 billion, and it's supposed to be about jobs and small business. I was very frustrated about that, and then pushed the president, talked to the president about doing more in terms of SBA, and we are trying to push more aggressively. We have a new administrator there that I've challenged her that say, look, 3%, 24 billion, it needs to be 100 billion.
Right.
Because small businesses don't have access to capital, but they're the job creators.
Well, you've also, didn't you sponsor a piece of legislation in the House specifically for small business? You were talking about, working with small businesses to, to ensure better credit for them and outreach to their requirements. You were involved in a portion of that?
We just had a lot of the SBA people in. We had a kind of a town hall meeting for small businesses probably a couple of months ago. We're going to have another one, but there are more programs that we're coming out with. We got a new one about $35,000 where they can pay it back over a period of time. I had one guy stand up to me and he says, I got laid off. I want to, I'm interested in the alarm business. I need $7,000, $8,000. I can't borrow from anybody or any bank. I want an opportunity to get in business for myself. That's what I want to do. I want to see more of the stimulus go into small business, get more of our banks to work with SBA. And the banks, SBA now is guaranteeing 100%. But a lot of the banks say, well, it takes too long, paperwork, it's not as profitable. But it is a good thing for our community. So we're going to probably have another town hall, I hope, in the next October sometime. But in this group, we had 140 people, Charles, that showed up, small business people. It was aimed at small business people. I asked the first question, how many are you challenged in terms of either keeping your relationship with the bank or having a challenge with your bank or they're pulling your line of credit? And everybody in the room, I'd say 98% raised their hand. And credit to small businesses and consumers is still a big-time issue, and we're working aggressively to try to make that better. And I think the way we can do that, because a lot of banks under a lot of pressure today, their own capital base, we're trying to get the SBA to step up and do more. In the interim, let it sunset in a year or two when the banks and the economy gets going again. But the small businesses are really hurting, and that's my passion. Well,
you've been a strong advocate of small business, your whole career, as president of the Florida Chamber. But let's get right into it. The stimulus. I mean, you mentioned it, you talked about it. Has it helped? Is it going to help? How much of an impact is it going to make on this economy?
Well, I was at a town hall last night. We had about 300 people down in Venice, and I asked them, have you been stimulated? you got the $800 billion? Okay, do you feel the stimulation? I voted against it. We offered a bill. I think we needed some stimulus. It was $400 billion, half. It would have created twice as many jobs. To me, stimulus should be pure and simple. It's got to help small business, it's got to help working families, and it's got to be able to create jobs. And I was concerned, for example, like in infrastructure, there was so little of the stimulus going into roads and bridges, but yet our community, Sarasota, Manatee County, they call MPO, they've identified projects today that under the current funding would take 50 years.
Correct.
Let's take some stimulus, bring it down here, take the pressure off the local taxpayers, build some roads and bridges, and put some people to work. I think people could at least justify that in their mind, but they never really allocated enough money. It was a token amount. I thought if you're going to have a stimulus, let it be half of the money. At least taxpayers can say, look, they see that new road they're building, that new bridge over into Anna Maria Island, Manatee Avenue. Let's commit some dollars from that standpoint. And so I don't, I'm not very optimistic because it's $800 billion, interest over $1 trillion. We're going to leave that to our children and grandchildren, and I don't see how it's created jobs. In fact, the president said it's about economy and jobs. We've lost 2 to 3 million jobs in the country, lost a lot of jobs in Manatee County. Unemployment, Manatee and Sarasota County was like 3%. Right. It's now up to 11.
Right, even though there's been signs of some improvement in the economy, we're still looking at double-digit employment in this area. But, I must mention the fact that you were talking about transportation and the critical need for transportation. I mean, you're really to be congratulated for bringing down Secretary LaHood, the Secretary of Transportation, and you held another town hall meeting, about a month or so ago at the Sarasota airport. And one of the key things that came up on there is be able to get roads built. As a matter of fact, several people in the audience addressed that issue and were saying, we've done things in the past that have been slow and tedious. How can we facilitate this process and bring in funding down? And I think the overall consensus is that there needs to be new methods utilized to facilitate building.
Charles, you made a good point. I mean, a question from one of the folks that were in the room, it takes 10, 12 years to get a project built. And the new secretary is a part of course, the Obama administration, Ray LaHood. I knew him before, not well, but I wanted to get him down here to talk about our projects in Manatee and Sarasota County and have him get a sense. And I also had the opportunity to ride back with him on the plane for 2.5 hours, so we had a chance to continue to talk about things that are important. But I think it's important for people to have access to people like Secretary LaHood.
Right, exactly.
It also gets him familiar with our projects, and he was very gracious, spent whatever time to answer all the questions.
Most
and
certainly.
I'm going to work very closely with him. I tell people there's too much partisan politics in Washington. That's why I wanted to reach out, even though he's with the administration, and let's work together and do what's best for America. And that's the attitude I come. To me, it's not about Democrat and Republican. As we move, once we get through the elections, it's really about working together and doing what's best for Americans. And that's why I wanted Secretary to come down to make sure we get our fair share, because we've been shorted for 40 years in Manatee counties. The taxpayers have had to come out of pocket to pay for a lot of these roads and bridges, and it's time that we get a little bit more than we should get, maybe.
I must say, you're really to be congratulated for bringing somebody from the cabinet, at a cabinet level, down here. During my tenure here throughout Manatee County, this is the first time we've seen a cabinet level officer come down and address that. And I think Manatee County owes you a debt of gratitude for bringing somebody of that caliber down to address it. But one of the key things, and today, you're actually, later today, you're going to hold another one of your town hall meetings, is the issue that seems to be on the front pages and on everybody's mind, is health care and health care reform. And the big issue that comes up is, the administration's plan and how people are feeling about this. Tell us your thoughts on this. And obviously, health care reform is on everybody's mind, and it's a requirement. It's the process of what's being presented. And tell us what you think.
Well, this town hall, I don't know. Normally in the past you have a town hall, you have 50 people. We're expecting maybe 1,000 a day, 700. I don't know, but it's going to be packed at one of the high schools here in Manatee County. Correct. But I want to congratulate the president for taking it on. It is a big, big issue. When I was chairman of the chamber for 2 years, one of the biggest things is small businesses couldn't get or couldn't afford health care. So one thing all Democrats and Republicans agree to is that we need health care reform. I was with a guy yesterday, he's actually with the AARP, represents the whole region. He's 63. He's paying for him and his wife, and he's got one dependent, $1,800 a month. Now that's crazy. There's no way, and the average employer pays over $1,000 a month if they're providing full coverage for a family. People can't afford it to pay for it, individuals, like a house payment, and they can't afford to give it in terms of small business. So we all agree that we need major health care reform. The difference is, I think we need to really attack the cost of it in terms of looking at tort and legal reform is a big issue. A neurosurgeon's got to pay $200,000 a year. We've got to look at the health insurance companies and their administration fees. We've got to take a look at the drug companies, all these things, and we've got to find a way to lower that. Along with the idea, I have, Charles, you probably know, out of 435 members of Congress, #1 in the country, #1, we have the most seniors 65 and older.
That's correct.
176,000. They're looking to cut Medicare $500 billion. I won't stand for it. I'm going to do everything I can to fight them. The seniors have sacrificed all their life from World War II all the way through, and then to think that they might be cut short when they're 75, and many of them, all they have is their Social Security and health and Medicare. I just won't stand for it, and we're going to fight right up to the end as it relates to that. Because in our area, more so than anywhere else in the country, our area in Florida, I should say, we have a lot more seniors that are 65 and older that are counting on Medicare. And what they tell me, they say, Vern, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. And I don't need that in my life at this point. So we've got to find a way to make it more efficient, get the fraud and abuse out of it, but not cut the service to the seniors. So I'm going to stand aggressively with the seniors.
Well, one of the key things that you've brought up over and over is, to get rid of the fraud, the waste, and abuse. And you've mentioned that in many presentations that we've had the opportunity. And I think that's that in itself is millions and millions of dollars worth of savings. But one of the things that's recently come out and it's been presented, and it's throughout town halls throughout the United States, States, is the opposition to that, the bills that are presented that include this public option. Tell us your thoughts on that, and why do you think people are reacting to this public option?
Well, I mean, the bottom line, they want to give 30 to 50 million people free health care. I mean, that's kind of the motivation. We're running a $2 trillion debt now. Mm-hmm. So you're looking to figure out how to way to pay for that. Now, someone's going to pay for it. There's no such thing as free. And when they look to cut $500 billion from Medicare, that concerns me. The other thing is a lot of people just feel that a public option, and the leaders on the Democratic side have said this, and this isn't a partisan issue. Barney Frank, I've seen him say this. That'll get him to a public option leads to a single payer option, which means basically the government's running all the health care. And I just think fundamentally, I'm just against the government running all the health care. Someone joking me with today, the cash for clunkers, they can't even pay the dealers. Well, if they can't administer that, how are they going to administer all the other health care things? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who pays or how they pay. I mean, I'd rather find another way. But we already pay twice as much as any other industrialized country in the world right now. If we don't deal with the cost side of this, that's how to get where we can get more people covered. It's more affordable, more access to health care. Mm-hmm. But we've got to deal aggressively on legal reform. The president came out and he said, this isn't about special interests. This is about doing what's right for America. But when you don't have legal and tort reform in the bill of 1,100 pages, there's something wrong. That's special interest. And so is the drug companies, and so is the health care company. Right. We need to look at all these things and figure out a way. It's costing a family of 4 right now over $1,000 a month. And we've got to get that down to $600 a month. It's been going up. I've bought health care for 30 years as a business person. It's gone up, I know in the last 15 years, probably 15-20% a year for many, many companies. And we've got to figure a way to cut it back substantially. Waste, fraud, and abuse is another way. They're talking about co-ops now. That's another possibility.
That's a new possibility that's come up in the recent weeks, is kind of a backing away from the public single payer into this co-op presentation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the public option, I think they wanted to get it done. They wanted to get the vote in our body before July, but they just didn't have the support. The Speaker had mentioned the Sunday before we left that she had the votes, and there was a good possibility she was going to try to get it down the floor. But they didn't. I don't think they had the votes, and it was the right thing to give the people a chance to weigh in a little bit longer. But the co-op is, I guess last Sunday was announced by the Secretary of Health that they're looking to maybe pass on the public option. Now, they don't want to pass, but they're passing because there's enough resistance against it, and they're looking at the co-ops. I haven't had enough time to look at it. I know they use co-ops historically hundreds of years for various things, and if it's a way, it's a nonprofit, if it's a way it can drive our costs down to cut the cost 40%. And many, I say this also, Charles, many businesses in Manatee and Sarasota County, their revenues are down 30%. Exactly. They've cut their costs 30%. Why can't we do the same thing right now instead of keeping everybody in place at the same expenses? But the co-ops, yeah, I want to be very open-minded. I'm not an automatic no. I think we need health care reform, and maybe the co-op's the way to get the cost down. But I want to make sure it works viably long-term for small business, for our seniors, for our veterans. Right. Veterans are concerned about TRICARE and how this is going to affect them. We've got, like I said, $2 trillion in debt we're going to look at this year. We got the first baby boomer turning 62, and they're going to look for their benefits, Social Security and Medicare. We've got to make sure before we start insuring a lot more people, we got to figure a way to drive the cost down so it gives us the capability to even consider that.
Well, I'm sure at tonight's town hall meeting and other town hall meetings that you may have in the coming months, that you're going to hear a lot of information out there and a lot of concerns from all of your constituents and citizens that have, legitimate concerns about this proposed health care reform. But let's switch for a moment here. One of the things that I'd like for you to talk about is, the government buyout. Now, the government has AIG and GM now, and it's kind of funny that they're in that business. Can you tell us your thoughts on about how you think about this blurring of lines, perhaps between business and the government? With AIG and GM, That's a significant investment by the government.
I'm against it. I mean, the government owns 60% of General Motors. I'm a kid that grew up down the street from General Motors. And then they're involved heavily in AIG. They're heavily involved in the banks. They want to ideally take over the insurance. They'll put out basically, you can have, if you do a public program, you're going to compete with the private insurance companies. You're going to put all them out of business. I think it's the wrong thing. I mean, I've been in business 30 years. It's about free enterprise, free markets,
right.
And I'm kind of a less government, less taxes, less spending type guy. And and I look at how much money we take in. First couple of years, about $3 trillion a year. We don't need to spend more than that, but yet we do. And there's a lot of people in Washington that think the government has all the answers. I don't believe that. I like to see the government closer to the people be able to react and keep more of the dollars here locally. Mm-hmm. It just seems like, and I have elected officials tell me this, that Washington seems like they're getting bigger and more intrusive, and the state government, local governments, everything. Everybody's looking to Washington, and I don't think that's a healthy thing.
Well, which leads me to my next question. What are your thoughts on the Tarp, on the Troubled Asset Recovery Program? I mean, Tarp was a significant player in this most recent economy thing. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, Tarp was supposed to be, ideally, my understanding, about half, when I asked the Secretary at the time, about half for banks and re-solidifying banks.
Right.
But the other half was supposed to go to consumers. They have access to credit, small business access to credit. And that's why I voted against it, because we gave them the first half, but they had to come back and ask for the second half.
Correct.
And they never did anything for small business. They create most of the jobs. They never did much. There's a lot of consumers out there that like to buy products, cars, furniture, houses, and their credit is pretty good but not perfect. A lot of those people don't have access to credit now, and a lot of Tarp was supposed to help the consumer, the working family, and as a result of that, if we had that Tarp money there, it would have created a lot more jobs. And I think sometimes in Washington they don't get it. And they just don't understand who creates the jobs, and it's I was at the chamber here locally. We had 2,400 businesses in that chamber. Manatee Chamber has 2,500 businesses.
Right.
Most of those businesses, 98%, 95%, they're not Tropicanas. We love Tropicanas, we love Bells, but most of them are 20, 30 employees or less.
Exactly.
What are we doing for those folks? They create the jobs. That's where I've tried to stand up and do everything I can to continue to support them and try to get additional capital available to them.
Which is a key thing. It's been said, small business is the backbone of America, and and you can look around. I mean, you can see throughout the two-county area, there's a lot of small businesses that are facing some significant hard times, whether they're laying back off employees or reducing, and some even going out of business. So the small business is the key to a vibrant economy. But one of the other things that you briefly touched about is the thing that's being done with Federal Highway right now. And on your opening remarks, you mentioned something about the port, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because the port is probably a key economic factor in this community.
I've been on bank boards in the community for 10 years, and we're all about tourism, home building, construction. There's some other industries, but not much. We need diversity. And when I look around the Southwest Florida, the biggest opportunity is Port Manatee. It's the closest port to the Panama Canal.
Right.
That's why I'm working aggressively on transportation to help initially start securing some money to build a connector road 75. We've got expansion. We need to do it now before that whole area gets developed, and it would cost 3 times as much. But I think it could be a huge job creator. I think it would be a great asset to the Southwest Florida, and I'm just confident that we need that kind of diversity in this region. And I think they got great, capable talent in terms of management. I've met with them numerous times out there. So I think I'm going to try to do everything I can to help them and be a part of the success there, because I really feel like it's got a huge opportunity in terms of the future of Manatee County.
Again, just to mention your involvement with Secretary LaHood, Mr. McDonald, the port director, was there at that meeting and was very grateful to have that kind of interaction with the Secretary of Transportation. And he, in turn, thanked you for your involvement in helping get that port kind of like on the right track for additional funding from the federal government. Yeah. So it was very. I'm telling you, that having the secretary here was a significant thing. And for those people who weren't in attendance, it was standing room only. Yeah. I mean, you packed 200 or 300 people easily. But one of the things I
would say that, Charles, on that, elected officials, one of the biggest things is trying to find transportation dollars without always having to go to the taxpayers. And I think this is an opportunity, myself being involved with transportation and their involvement in the community, identifying projects that we can get some funding that will create jobs and help working families, and that's really what it's all about.
I can see we only have a little time left, but I wanted to talk on a couple of issues that are really homegrown, if we may say so. One of those is, of course, Wares Creek. And Wares Creek has been looking for a method to have it dredged and for years. And you were one of the key players in helping the city and the county bring all of this together and make this happen. Tell us, what's happening now with Wares Creek and your involvement with it.
Well, when I got here, I asked a lot of the county and city commissioners, what's the top 2 or 3 projects? One is the county had written a check for $1.7 million. They never got back 6 years. We were able to deliver that. But the other one, more importantly, was Wares Creek. They've been talking about it and working on it 25 years. I said, that's crazy. Either let's get that done or find a way if it can get done, or let's forget about it. I'm not, So we brought everybody together, county and city commission, state folks in terms of permitting, and we've been able to solve all the problems pretty much. I think we've got a final permit. We should start letting contracts out pretty soon. We did get authorized $44 million, so it's going to be the right thing to reduce flooding for a lot of residents in downtown Bradenton, but at the same time it's going to create jobs and opportunities for the community. And that combination is what we need right now. But it's, again, I don't pick what projects. I tell them, I work for the people. I feel like I work for the county and city commission. They tell me, how I can help, what their top 2 or 3 projects are. Then it's my job with our staff. We've got a great staff here in Washington, is to go to work and see if we can't cut through the nonsense and get some of these projects done. Now, this is the taxpayers' money anyway. We just want to get back our fair share down in our communities and put some people back to work.
Well, I must say, from the city's perspective and the county's perspective, they're most appreciative of your efforts on their behalf to get this project moving, get it off the dime, because it was stalled for so many years without any kind of forward movement. And I think the city, and I think they've expressed that to you, of how much they appreciate. But I can see we only have a few minutes left here. I want to talk to you a little bit about one thing that you've been involved with, in both of your terms here, and that's with veterans. And we were very fortunate. METV was very fortunate to tape the dedication of the Sarasota Veterans Cemetery, and it was a really moving event. I mean, the place was packed. There was hundreds and hundreds of veterans there that it meant something to them, and you were a real catalyst in making that happen. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we have 97,000 veterans. Within a veteran cemetery, we have 387,000 veterans and their families. So again, from the veterans community, was their top priority. We were able to secure 300 acres. They looked everywhere, thought this was the best spot, $14 million, and then we were able to go back and build out the first phase of it, which was about another $25 million. All that is in place. We're actually having services out there. People are very excited. Many of the veterans, grandfathers or fathers or whatever, World War II veterans, we're losing 1,200 a day, are having to go north of Hillsborough, north of Tampa, to take their loved ones up there. So they're very excited about the fact that we've got a local cemetery here locally. But everybody played a part on that. We had a great effort. We got a great committee in place. We've got a great director that's on site and brought this thing on time and on budget. So it's been a team effort, but at the end of the day, it's about showing some appreciation and working hard for the 387,000 veterans that will be able to use this and their family in the local communities.
But your involvement with veterans doesn't stop there. I mean, you've been involved in some of the health care issues as well as looking at, at their issues concerning benefits and education, for the returning veterans that are coming back as well. And I know veteran groups throughout both county areas are very appreciative of all of the efforts on their behalf. So, Congressman, we're going to wrap up here a little bit. I want to give you an opportunity. What do you see as like the most significant issues that you're going to be addressing in the upcoming session?
Well,
I mean, there's going to be a lot of them, but give us the top two that you think you're going to be.
We'll go back right after Labor Day, and the big focus is going to be on health care. I think they want to push to get something maybe out of our body by the end of September, and maybe get a health care bill ideally by the end of the year. Depends on what happens. I'll let you know at the town hall today, but depends on what happens there. And then I think the next thing on the agenda is immigration, from what I'm gathering. It's been semi-announced, but that's just what I'm hearing on the inside. My focus is going to be, as it's been since January 1 till now, is economy and jobs, working families. And I think that's the #1 most important issue, because we can't pay for all these things unless we get people back to work, paying taxes, small businesses being able to create jobs. And that's going to be my thrust really for probably the next 18 months. That's where I'm going to be looking. We got too many storefronts in Manatee and Sarasota County shutting down. These are people who've been in business for numerous years, and that's why they need access to capital. Many of them are shutting down because they've lost their lines of credit. Right. But we need to focus on working families and jobs and small business. That's my interest right now.
Well, Congressman, again, I want to thank you for taking time. What I know is a very busy schedule for you today. And one of the things that I do want to mention is that throughout your terms here, you've been kind of recognized as being very bipartisan. I think newspapers and things have written many editorials about your interest, not in being politically connected, but doing what's best for your constituents in this community. And again, you're to be congratulated for all the efforts on the behalf of Manatee and Sarasota County. And again, thank you. Thank you for being on our debut show here in our new studio. And we would welcome you back at any future time to talk about specific issues, or to perhaps hold one of your town hall meetings right here in our studio.
And Charles, let me just say, because you hit one last point, you hit a very good point there. The idea, it needs to be a lot less about partisanship. We need to do what's right for America and Americans. And maybe that's just the way I think in business, but to me, it's about putting getting the football into the end zone. Where's Creek? Get it done. Don't care about who gets the credit. Let's just get some things done for the American people.
Well, Congressman, we wish you the best of luck. And again, we really want to welcome you back at any time that you feel that you want to address an issue or to hold a and again, you're to be congratulated on doing all of these town hall meetings. I think this is the 8th or 9th in the series, and I think that's a great outreach to this community. I mean, we've done several down at USF with you, and we'll do this one this evening. I mean, that's a really great effort on your behalf to be doing all of this.
I tell people that it's nice to be called a congressman, but at the end of the day, I'm a representative. The town halls allows me to get their thoughts and ideas so I can reflect that passion in Washington.
Congressman, again, thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Up Close on METV. If you have questions or comments or would like to contact Congressman Buchanan, the screen will have information about how you can do that. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Manatee Educational Television.